When you find yourself in an environment where wet weather, bugs, standing water, things like that are of major concern, a shelter that you need to know is our A-frame jungle hooch, which we're showing you how to build. And one of the great things about this shelter is it can be thrown together in about an hour and a half tops. It's extraordinarily comfortable because it has a suspended debris bed, and it's also very water resistant, assuming that you have your poncho or a dedicated tarp to go with you. But if you watched and paid attention to our EDC requirements, you'll know that you should never go into the woods without some type of wet weather gear. And my top choice is a poncho because there's a lot of different setups I can use in order to build quick and efficient shelters. I also highly recommend taking a hammock with you to these types of environments. And if you don't take a hammock, this is a great shelter to use to get you up off the ground that can keep you away from the bugs, get you up out of the water, and kind of protect you from the elements that you would find in a swamp or in a waterborne type environment. It's very simple. The first step that you need to do is find two trees about 8 foot apart, and you want to build the shelter about the length of your body, so kind of judge that based on how short or how tall you are. And then you need to make an A-frame, and you're going to lean that A-frame up against each tree. And at the bottom of the A-frame, you're going to build almost kind of a header or a crossbar that goes across it in order to set your platform on top of. And at the top of the A-frame, you want to physically tie the tree at the top here to make sure that it doesn't lean forward. Now, say you find yourself in an area where you can't find two trees together, you could replace the tree by building a freestanding tripod. And that's very simple to do. All you do is make a tripod, lash it at the top, and then build a crossbar with the two bars facing in towards the shelter. Once you get your crossbar and A-frame up, then you want to start filling in your bed. And one of the benefits of this shelter being as comfortable as it is that we run our trees or our logs lengthwise instead of cutting them crosswise. A lot of survival manuals I see out there will show you to essentially cut the base of your bed with the logs going sideways instead of lengthwise along the bed. And the problem with that method is that, one, it takes a lot longer to cut those logs, and because of the way that they're laying, they have no flex. And by cutting them lengthways, we essentially add some flex and make the bed more comfortable. Once we get our base foundation of logs in for the frame, then we're going to take other lengthwise logs and stack almost like a log cabin, where we take two lengthwise ones stacked on top of a crosswise bar, the crosswise bar being this way, and we'll start with that one. Then we will take our lengthwise ones and put them to the inside of the shelter so that we don't have to use extra lashing in order to secure it. Because if we did it to the outside, that would take an excess amount of cordage. And we just Lincoln log stack these up. You can see the crossbar here. You can see the bottom bar here. And you can stack that bed almost as tall as you want in order to make it comfortable. But keep in mind that it's going to angle up with the actual A-frame here. So if you keep stacking it too high, it's going to come to almost like a pyramid, and you're going to have less physical space to get in and out of your bed. So I tend to stack it about 2 to 3 logs deep. And then once you get that section of the shelter built out, then you want to put a top bar in here. Now you can either use a normal log, or you can take a piece of paracord and use something like a trucker's hitch or a Siberian hitch to go all the way across. And that is a tightening style of knot that will get your rope very tight. And we'll show you that during the tarp setup. And then we cover it with cedar boughs. And then after you get your boughs over the top, and you can use a lot of different things, you can use vines or anything to just kind of cover the cracks. And then we cover the top with a minimum of about 1 foot of debris. Once you get that done, then you're going to take either your poncho or your dedicated tarp. And if you're in a wet weather environment and you're not going to carry a full hammock system, I highly recommend at a minimum that you take a tarp and a poncho with you. That way you can leave the tarp, which is a little bit larger than your poncho, on your shelter, and you can take your poncho with you when you need to venture out to, you know, procure water, get game, collect wild edibles, things of that nature. So it's a very simple and quick shelter to throw up. As long as you have the materials in the area, it can be done between an hour and an hour and a half. And you want to set this shelter up in a location that is preferably, you know, farther away from standing water due to things like mosquitoes, snakes. So if you can find a high point somewhere in a swamp or, you know, whatever waterborne environment you're in, you're going to be a little bit better off. As far as heating this shelter is concerned, if you find yourself in a waterborne environment that gets cooler at nighttime, you can build a long fire next to these. Just make sure that you don't get it too close to your nylon or poncho, nylon tarp or your poncho. And you can also take hot rocks and you can heat those hot rocks up in your fire, and once they are cool enough to where you can actually grab them and place them on your skin, you can take those hot rocks and put them under your arms and between your legs. And the reason for that is because, you know, that's where the blood is very close to the skin. And those hot rocks, depending on what type of rocks they are, will last approximately anywhere from 3 to upwards of 8 hours, depending on the rock type. And, you know, that's a great way to keep yourself warm. And another thing to mention is that if you find yourself in an environment where malaria, dengue fever, yellow fever are an issue from, you know, mosquitoes and other vector-borne insects, then you can take punky wood and actually get it smoldering, and you can place that punky wood and let it smoke up underneath your shelter, and it will envelop your shelter in kind of a plume of smoke. And while it's not, you know, it's not as comfortable, obviously you're going to breathe a little bit more smoke in, it's a hell of a lot better than getting malaria, because malaria is one of those kind of lifelong diseases. You know, the parasites actually stay in your liver and can cause, you know, problems later in your life. So another element to add to a shelter system like this, if you could carry it, especially in a jungle environment, is something like mosquito netting. And you could place your tarp up and then put your mosquito netting to the inside of this, and maybe even put some punky logs underneath, and you're sure to be protected from those insects.